Something in you has been tightening and loosening like a tide, a quiet back and forth that you can feel behind the noise of the day. And if you listen now, you will hear it naming a threshold. If these words have arrived at this exact hour, it is because the pattern has reached its turn. Not by accident, but by the slow mathematics of attention and timing. There is a kind of weather that gathers before a breakthrough, a hush that is not empty, a pause that makes the air feel denser, as if the room were waiting for a note that has not yet been played. The universe shows you this by arranging the world into little echoes. You think of someone, and they appear. A sentence from a book you almost skipped holds the one phrase you needed. Clocks seem to repeat a number until you finally set the phone down and admit that you have noticed. What looked like delay last week turns out to be choreography. Because when one door refused you, it shifted your feet 3 degrees to the left, where a better door stands unlocked. You may feel a strange mixture of restlessness and peace, a desire to move with no idea where to go, paired with the certainty that movement has already begun beneath the surface. This is not a trick of wishful thinking. This is what happens when many small choices begin to resonate with each other until they create one large wave that carries you forward. The old language for this is sign and omen. The new language is pattern and phase. You can call it either and still feel the truth of it. The field around you is aligning. The ordinary details that usually slide past your awareness are starting to click into an arrangement that points. That pointing is what I mean by this. This is the way a threshold announces itself when you are close enough to touch it. You notice odd kindness from strangers who seem to know your mood without asking. You discover that mistakes redirect you rather than punish you. Technology glitches just long enough to steer you out of an unhelpful habit, then returns to normal as if nothing happened. Dreams grow brighter and carry simple images that repeat across several nights. A color here, a place there, a verb that keeps insisting. People who no longer belong to your next chapter begin to drift toward the edges of your days, and it feels less like loss and more like clarity. You find yourself cleaning a drawer or clearing the car without planning to, and the space that appears feels like a promise. All of this is the same message spoken in different accents. Something wants to become real through you, and the world is rearranging itself to make room. If you lean a fraction toward trust, the signs multiply. If you lean a fraction toward fear, the signs do not disappear. They wait with patience, because patience is the shape of truth when it is sure of its own arrival. This moment works like a lens. When you bring your attention to it, the lens focuses scattered light into a line that can cut through what used to feel solid. The mind expects confirmation first and permission second, but the universe works the other way around. Permission comes first in the form of readiness. Confirmation is what follows when readiness is steady enough to hold what arrives. You cannot pry doors open faster with anxiety. You can only make your hands slippery. You can, however, prepare your grip. You prepare by softening the places that have been clenching for too long, by letting your breath lengthen until your body remembers what safety feels like, by telling the part of you that always runs ahead that it can sit beside you for a while and watch. Think of yourself standing on a shoreline at night. The waves are coming whether or not you demand them. Your task is to feel their rhythm and step when the water reaches your ankles, not when it is at your knees and the undertow muddles your footing. The rhythm is here. The proof is the way time has been behaving around you. Hours that once dragged now pass cleanly. Days that once felt crowded make room for a conversation that changes the angle of an idea you have carried for months. The universe shows you this in subtle generosity. Parking spaces appear exactly when you decide not to rush. The right words arrive in your mouth when you stop rehearsing. You do not become someone else tonight. You become more yourself by a measurable click. The detours that exhausted you were not punishments, they were calibration, turning you toward a line of travel that can actually carry your weight. You are near enough now that the next small action will matter more than any dramatic gesture. The door you are seeking opens inward. There is no need to kick. Place your palm on the wood and feel how the grain runs. When you feel the direction, press with the steadiness of someone who has nothing to prove. The hinge will answer. The room on the other side will feel like memory and discovery at once. The word for this sensation is recognition. You already know the life that is trying to meet you. It knows you too. This is how the universe shows you that you are close. It lets your life rhyme with itself, then waits for you to speak the next line out loud. There is a moment in a journey when the map in your hand stops being useful because the landscape itself begins to point the way. And if you have been sensing that kind of guidance lately, you are standing in it now. This is not about hunting for omens like a detective looking for fingerprints on glass. It is about letting the room reveal its architecture by how the light moves across it. The universe speaks to creatures who are listening with simple choreography. The email that should have arrived yesterday waits one more day so that when it appears it finds you already braver. The plan that would have kept you small dissolves without drama. And in the quiet that follows, you notice a larger outline you had been stepping around for months. You start catching glimpses of yourself as if in a window at dusk. The present you and the near future you layered on the same pane, and the two versions are beginning to align. This is the quality of this. It is not spectacle, but convergence. Threads that belong together begin to twist into a single rope strong enough to hold your weight. You will feel it in your body as ease that arrives without reason. As if someone has opened a window in a stuffy house, and the air has started to move again. When people describe surrender, they sometimes imagine a collapse, but what is being asked of you is the opposite. It is a standing up into your exact shape. Control has been a wonderful tool until now, and also a heavy coat you wore through many seasons. In this weather, that coat is too warm. Taking it off is not a defeat. It is simply accurate. You are not required to script the arrival of your good. You are required to make enough interior space that your good can recognize you on sight. If you feel the pull to check for proof every hour, remember the sea. The tide does not ask the shore for validation. The tide knows its schedule and keeps it. Your work is to become tidal. When the impulse to rush begins to rise like a small storm, meet it with the kind of breath that tells storms there is no harbor to rattle. Lengthen the exhale. Lengthen the gaze. Let your attention rest on one ordinary object in the room until it steadies. This is how you trade the posture of waiting for the posture of readiness. The difference is subtle and it changes everything. Waiting is a clenched jaw. Readiness is an open palm. One pushes the door, the other feels where the door swings and moves with it. You will know you are near because time begins to behave differently. Appointments fall through and reveal an afternoon that becomes the birthplace of an idea. A conversation you feared would be complicated turns tender and ends with an invitation you could not have engineered. Resources arrive sideways, carried by people you barely expected to meet. Even detours become helpful, turning you around to show you a landmark you missed. None of this is an accident, and none of it is a test you can fail. It is alignment, demonstrating itself so gently that only the patient can see it. Be patient. Let what is leaving complete its leaving without calling it back for one last performance. Let what is entering settle by degrees so it can root instead of merely visiting. You are nearing a threshold that opens from both sides. The part of you that has been laboring to reach it and the part of your future that has been walking toward you with steady steps. When two travelers meet at a door like this, the most graceful thing is not to shove or to apologize. It is to nod in recognition and step through together. If your mind argues that this cannot be your story, that the timing is wrong, or the past too heavy, allow the argument to finish its sentence and then look around. Notice how the evidence has been arranging itself while the mind rehearsed its objections. Notice the calm that returns each time you remember that you are not fabricating a miracle, but cooperating with one. Cooperation looks like choosing the cleaner thought when both are available, and trusting that the cleaner thought will invite a cleaner act. It looks like tidying a corner of your life that no longer fits who you are becoming, and discovering that the empty space draws the right thing toward it. It looks like speaking one honest sentence when you would have used 10 careful ones. It looks like listening for the exact moment the wave lifts and stepping then, not earlier, not later. This is your cue, and it has been arriving in small ways all week. The book you were meant to find is already open to the right page because your hands have learned what they are reaching for. The room you feared might be locked will not resist you because the door was built for your touch. Take that in. This is not a riddle. It is a rhythm. When you move with it, the world answers in kind. Breakthrough does not arrive like thunder. It condenses like rain from a sky that has been gathering for days, and the way you know it is near is that the air changes before the first drop touches your skin. This is the shift you have been feeling without quite naming it. A soft pressure around ordinary moments. A pull toward a point that keeps brightening even when you look away. The universe shows you this by leaning small events in the same direction until they form an arrow you cannot ignore. You think of a path you once abandoned, and within hours, someone mentions it by name. A stranger repeats a sentence you whispered to yourself the night before. You notice that your appetite for noise is fading, and that silence no longer feels empty, but precise, as if it were measuring the room for a new arrangement. Control begins to loosen its grip, not because you failed it, but because it has completed its assignment. The part of you that once tried to push the river now notices the river is moving without your hands, and your work is to stop placing rocks in the current. This is what surrender actually means at the edge of a breakthrough. It is not collapse or passivity. It is the exact choice to stop arguing with a tide that is already on your side. You do not need to prove you are ready. Readiness is the feeling of being carried 2 steps for every one you take. The sensation that tasks finish themselves as soon as you begin them. The calm that moves into your chest when you stop demanding proof and start offering permission. Permission sounds like this. I allow what is mine to find me by routes I cannot plan. When you live that sentence for an afternoon, the field around you organizes differently. The right email lands when you have the energy to answer it. The conversation that once cost you courage now unfolds like a path you have already walked. The door that would not open yesterday yields under a smaller touch because you are pressing with the grain rather than against it. You will also feel the last resistance flare, as if it wants one final word before the scene changes. Old habits will invite you to check and refresh and rehearse. Fear will present itself as practicality and ask you to delay until every variable is known. Here is the counter move. Place your attention on the smallest, truthful action that does not require permission from anyone. Send the message that removes a stale commitment. Put your shoes by the door for the morning you have promised yourself. Choose the sentence you will say in the meeting and let it be simple. Small, accurate steps pull the new timeline closer because they demonstrate coherence, and coherence is the language reality understands when it decides which possibility to solidify. At this distance, signs will also become playful. Numbers repeat until you laugh. The song you needed begins exactly where you left it. A feather, a coin, a phrase on a billboard arrives with such precise timing that you no longer waste energy on whether you are making it up. You understand that noticing is participation, and participation is what collapses indecision into form. If you want a name for the sensation in your body, call it phase change. Ice remembers itself as water and becomes it without argument. You are remembering yourself as the person who can live the life you have been rehearsing in glimpses. And the change is not dramatic from the outside because it is simply accurate. Accuracy feels like returning a key to the door it was cut for. Accuracy feels like a room taking a breath when you walk in. The universe shows you this by removing friction from the edges of your day. Lines shorten. Traffic parts. A delay places you next to the one conversation that moves the entire project forward. Even your mistakes begin to land on soft ground and convert into instruction instead of shame. When this becomes your weather, you are within reach of the turning. Do not rush it. Rushing is how you step past the handle. Stay close to your breath and to the smallest detail that feels honest. You are not waiting for a miracle to argue its way into your calendar. You are letting your calendar learn a new rhythm. The sign you have been asking for is already present. It is the clean quiet under your thoughts when you stop scanning for threats. It is the way your spine lengthens when you speak the truth instead of the performance. It is the relief you feel when you let the wave lift you instead of pretending you are the one making the ocean move. This is how the universe says you are close. It repeats the invitation in kinder and kinder forms until you accept. And the instant you accept, the threshold behaves like a friend and opens. Breakthrough loves modest entrances, and when it is close, it seldom arrives with a roar. It slips into the room like a change in temperature, and your body knows before your mind signs the paperwork. You notice you can breathe a little deeper without telling yourself to try. That the noise you used to chase no longer tempts you. That you reach for quiet company over clever distraction. That a steadier yes rises in your chest when you place a hand on what matters. The universe shows you this by shaping ordinary hours into a rhythm that fits your true pace. Plans you kept out of habit fall away without drama, and the space they leave behind feels like clean air. Conversations that once required armor now move on their own, as if the words had been waiting in a drawer for the day you would open it. This is the quality of the sign you asked for. It is sobriety without heaviness, softness without retreat, clarity without the need to announce itself. You will see it in the way problems begin to present their own exits. A message you drafted 3 times finally writes itself in a single clear sentence. A task that used to demand 3 hours folds into 1 because you have stopped arguing with it. Appetite shifts from craving into nourishment because you are not trying to fill a hole. You are feeding a direction. The body loves accuracy, and accuracy tastes like calm. When you stop contorting to fit an old contour, muscles release old negotiations, and energy returns to the places that need it. Sleep steadies. Morning light lands kinder. Even the mirror begins to tell the truth with more generosity. The mind will ask for spectacle, for a trumpet to mark the moment. But the closer you are, the more you will be asked to feel rather than dramatize. Feeling is the clean instrument here. You might notice a soft grief for versions of you that kept the fire lit when the room was cold. Thank them and let them rest. The task has changed from survival to growth. And growth makes a different sound. It sounds like a branch holding a new leaf without strain. It sounds like a door giving under a gentle hand because you are finally pressing with the grain. If resistance rises for one last scene, it will wear believable costumes. It will call itself responsibility. It will remind you of a promise you made to an identity that no longer fits. You do not have to fight it. You only have to tell the truth a little sooner than you used to. The truth is simple, and it is not cruel. It says that timing has ripened and that loyalty to your becoming helps everyone more than loyalty to your stagnation ever could. When you speak this aloud, even quietly, the field around you reorients as if someone turned a compass to north. You will also begin to move in a way that does not waste force. There is a difference between pushing a river and placing your boat where the current wants to carry it. Inspired action feels like that current. It does not exhaust you. It puts color in your face and steadiness in your hands. You send one message and 3 doors open. You make one call and the conversation ends with a sentence that changes the shape of your week. You take one walk at a time you would normally stay at your desk and meet the person who mentions the opportunity your name was already circling. This is not luck. This is coherence. The inside and the outside are saying the same thing long enough for the world to hear you clearly. If you want another way to read the signs, listen for repeats. The same word appears in different mouths and refuses to be ignored. A location you have not visited in years rises in your mind until you finally check the map and discover your next step lives there. Dreams place a single object in your hand 3 nights in a row, and when you wake and name it, you realize it is not symbolic at all. It is practical. This is not superstition. This is attention becoming precise enough to notice how reality communicates when you are almost home. There will be a moment when you realize you are no longer asking whether this is happening. You are asking how gently you can welcome it so that it roots instead of burns. That question is a mark of maturity. It turns you from a collector of moments into a steward of momentum. Stewardship looks quieter from the outside. It looks like clearing space on the calendar for what matters without apologizing. like saying one no that frees 10 future yeses, like resting without guilt, because you know that rest is a form of intelligence. Finally, take in how gratitude changes flavor as you near the crossing. It stops being a strategy and becomes recognition. You are not praising the world to barter for a gift. You are acknowledging how precisely the world has been arranging itself around your willingness. Recognition stabilizes change. When you name what is working, it keeps working. When you thank the quiet forces that carried you through the last valley, those forces have somewhere to return when the next ascent begins. This is the sign. This is the way the universe says you are close, not with fireworks, but with a life that starts to rhyme with the future you have been brave enough to imagine. Now that the signs have gathered like sparks on the edge of kindling, the question is not whether this is happening, but how to move in a way that lets the flame take. The universe is showing you this by changing the feeling of effort itself. Work no longer tastes like pushing a boulder uphill. It feels like placing a wheel on a track that was hidden beneath the brush. When you act from that place, the world answers with proportionate grace. Doors that once required a shoulder yield to a fingertip. People who meet you for the first time behave as if you are already in the circle. Even the mirror begins to collaborate, not by flattering you, but by returning the steadiness you bring to it. The final distance to a breakthrough is measured in the softness of your grip. The habit of forcing outcomes will ask to see the manager one last time, and you can smile and let it talk itself quiet. Control kept you safe when you needed it. Gratitude discharges it when you no longer do. What matters now is coherence between the person you have rehearsed in private and the person you embody in public. This is why the simplest acts are the most powerful. Walk like someone who is not late for their own life. Speak one sentence fewer and choose the truest one earlier. Sit with your shoulders where they would rest if the news had already arrived. Your nervous system reads these choices as proof and organizes around them. The field reads them as permission and moves the furniture to match. If doubt rises with old credentials and asks for evidence, let your body answer. Feel the longer exhale that has been visiting your evenings. Notice how your attention returns to the present without a leash. Sense the way your jaw loosens when you tell the clean truth. These are not mood swings. They are switches being set.